Hello and welcome to Banking Frontiers Live. We are in for a very interesting conversation around the topic of data. Let us talk to some very interesting CIOs of the industry. And today I have got two very interesting luminaries having this conversation with me. One is Dr. Rajendran, who is the CIO of MCX with me. Dr. Rajendran, welcome to All About Data by Banking Frontiers Live.
Thank you very much, Babu. It's indeed my pleasure to talking to your magazine.
Thank you very much. We are also talking to Mr. Srikumar, who is the founder of Alpharithm, which has been a undisputed leader in the area of data management and data governance. Sri, welcome to Banking Frontiers Live.
Thank you, Babu. Thank you for having me today.
So, Dr. Rajendran, let me start with you. In this entire world of digital transformation, the structured and unstructured data make a lot of important sense for all the businesses, and especially so when the businesses have started making use of all this unstructured data. You are working with a lot of applications which consume, and many of which may consume unstructured data as well. Now, as an exchange, as a commodity exchange, how have you been working with this combination of structured and unstructured data? And how have you been making more sense out of this unstructured data in your business, especially from a exchange perspective?
There are two kind of areas. One is an exchange as a central system, and there is an ecosystems. And what you see the things, most of the data at the central locations, mostly on the process and direct inputs goes to the exchange, because exchanges distribute the data. Exchange don't create the data. Okay, exchange distribute the data, and the data is created by the members. They themselves, the buying, selling, all the things are. So these one kind of data, it is for a faster decision making. So the exchanges are users completely, maybe the you can call it as the very structured way of the informations inside for a decision making. But at the same time, the ecosystems, those who are participating members, will do lot of analysis before taking their decisions.
Which data is absolutely of no much use to you and has to go into the graveyard, or which are the data that can be used again and again, and how are organizations working on this identification and classification of this data?
The first about the customer informations, when then onboarding the customers, and there are a lot of data are collected, demographic details or the KYC details, KYC in the form of the video, in the form of the images, in the PDF forms, and lot of information is created in the while onboarding. That has the more information about the either customer or companies. Okay, and the second type of the data which is generated during the day-to-day operations, when a customer or the entities doing any transaction in the any of these financial institutions, doing the business, and we're making a transactions, and some informations are generated.
Interesting. Now, Sri, you have been working with a lot of organizations globally. Is there any kind of policy framework or any kind of system in place that organizations globally are trying to, which is the kind of data which is of regular use and which are probably many a times redundant for them? And how do they work globally? How have you been supporting organizations?
So firstly, I think most enterprises started on this data lake initiative, where they started storing massive amounts of structured and unstructured data in a central common repository. And then they wanted to run analytics on it, and some of them succeeded, some of them did not, and all that. Now, if you look at all this unstructured data, multiple forms of the data, right? In the form of what Dr. Rajendran just talked about, which is in the form of images, videos, PDF documents, and so on, but also in the form of metadata information that is sitting in the logs and so on. Some companies have started analyzing, some of them have not. So we could call all this as, classify them as dark data. And what is happening is you could apply some technology to derive valuable insights from this dark data. Now, there is this concept called data fabric that we have today, which Gartner coined, I guess, a couple of years back. Now, what it provides is a technology agnostic platform to access siloed data from various sources, whether it is on-prem or cloud. Now, it also automates the discovery and governance and consumption of the data by analytics and AI applications, right? Because you have all this data, dark data sitting, and you need a mechanism to derive value from it. So there are technologies available, but the concept is called data fabric, and most enterprises have now started applying this data fabric concept to derive value from this dark data. That is, how do I make structured data contextual? So basically, you can use unstructured data to make structured data contextual and give a 360-degree flavor to the whole process.
So one of the important thing that we can notice is data being such a very critical kind of activity for any organization. There should be some meaningful measure for measuring the value of data. So, Dr. Rajendran, how are organizations today assigning values or measurability to this kind of data that they are working on?
Quite interesting thing about the measuring the value of the data. And see, it is like it depends upon the organizations. Some data for some people could be a waste. Some people could be a very valuable. Okay. So you take an example on the internet browsers. We go and just browse so many things. And when you get into the things, somebody collects the data. Starting from the browser, a browser, people collect the data. It's hundreds of informations are being collected. And any search engines, they also collect what is the hit and what is the things, and the operating system also people collect the information. And now Android becomes the famous in the mobiles, and every hit in the Android also somebody collects the information, whether OEMs or whether it is the Google's or so many organizations, they collect the data.
I also want to touch upon another important aspect of data, that is the governance of data. And most of the organizations are today working on a strong governance framework for data. How are you viewing at the topic of data governance?
Okay, see, this is very complex, and it is very tough job to any CIO or any CTO of the organization. It starts from the capturing onwards. When you capture, whether the data can be captured as a plain text or it should be an encrypted. Okay, and where it to be stored, and how long is to be stored, and who will owns this data, because everything costs to an organization. When you wanted to introduce an encryption and decryptions, and it increases the computing loads, and it increases the response times, and it is also adds the additional storages. Okay, because of the hashing need to be stored, and the original data need to be stored and compare, and it has the different level of the decision need to be taken by the SCIO. Apart from the just handling, storing, or the retrieving, or transporting the information, and first of all, who is the custodian of the data? We need to define in the ownership of the data, because this is very important nowadays. Before even the data is travel from one system to another systems, need to define whether it can be shared, first of all. Then second, whether it can be processed. For example, some of the data which is captured, you are taking a consent of the end customers. Only this can be processed for only this kind of the process. Maybe 1, 2, 3, you are telling this can be utilized only for limited purpose, and communicating to a respective people, or it can be used for improving the experience, or it can be improve the security, or such kind of, you are defining, while even capturing data itself, you are defining what purpose you are collecting the data from the end users.
Interesting. as a tech service provider, I wanted to know a little bit from Sri on how you have been looking at this area of measuring the value of data on one side, and on the other side about how are you helping in creating a governance framework for data.
What we're also seeing is, if you think about data governance, it's trying to address two things. One is, how do I make data as an enterprise asset such that you can derive value from the data, so that you can put measuring and metrics, policies, and frameworks in order to derive value from the data. Now, if you look at the highest state of nirvana, that is where you can monetize the data that you have collected and stored and processed within the organization for many, many years. But also, whether you're measuring or not, the data that you have collected has to make sense for the consumers, which is typically your analytics and AI decision making processes, which is what most organizations today use that data collected for. But what we're also seeing is that 70% of the data scientists are spending time on preparing and improving the quality of data. They are spending very little time actually building AI models. So what we need is a robust data management framework, which will massively improve the quality of data and also make the data available. Then you apply what we call as data lineage tools to find out exactly how data traveled from, let's say, source to target. That is the point of collection of this information, like Dr. Rajendran said. And ultimately, somebody has to use this data, which is the target consumer, internal, external, etc. And once you create this data lineage, then what happens magically is trust develops within the data. So we deliver trust in the data. Then you apply principles like data privacy, security, access control, etc., around the data governance framework, which will all obviously result in reducing cost and reducing risk.
So very interesting perspective to look at from different angles and try to see how things work out. And my last question to you, Dr. Rajendran, as a CIO, you have been working on various projects and you are working on data day in and day out. On one side is the security aspect of the data, securing the data. The second one is governing the data. The third one is risk management and compliance of the data. And a lot, and fourth one is also to make sure that the business holder is getting or deriving enough value out of the data to take his business to the next level. So amongst all this, how do you put your prioritization for all these activities in and around data? What gives you the most sleepless night?
See, the first thing that comes to me immediate mind is the protecting the data, okay, and the compliance to regulatory requirements. So both the security aspect and the compliance to the regulatory, both are like a two eyes, okay. We need to comply with and we need to secure the data. This is no compromise to the whatever says, but this is it is the priority on any of the CISOs, I think so, okay. And the other thing is how the data could be used for in the business or any other things. I think I leave it to the individual business to decide it and how they make the need of the data, whether it's available or not, and how they should decide it, and depends upon the business requirements.
Interesting.
Thank you, Sri, for your insightful and for giving me an opportunity talking to you, Mr. Babu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rajendran.
Thank you.
It was very,
Thank you.
thanks for
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.